Here's a little bit of homework help, Unit 3, Lesson 6. Just a few questions on this one with a lot of parts. Question 1, a graph represents the perimeter y in units for an equilateral triangle with side units x. The slope of the line is 3 and the y-intercept is 0. Complete the statements about the meaning of the slope and the y-intercept. Let's look at a couple of key pieces of information first right here. We have perimeter as y. We know this is an equilateral triangle, which is a big deal. It means all the side lengths are the same and the side lengths are x units long. A couple of different pieces of information. We know that the slope is 3 and the y-intercept is 0. So let's complete some statements about the meaning of the slope and the y-intercept. The slope of 3 shows that the triangle has 3 what? Angles or sides? Well, let's look back, and when we talk about the slope, we need to remember that when we're talking about slope right here, if the y-intercept is 0, that's kind of a big deal. That tells us this is a proportional relationship. That means that we have k is going to represent our slope, and that y is going to be divided by x. That means that it's this, that the perimeter up here is dependent on the side lengths. So when we talk about the perimeter and the side lengths, what it might be helpful to do is to actually change this equation, k is equal to y divided by x, and recognize that the perimeter is going to be equal to the constant of proportionality, in this case 3, times the length of the sides. Remember that this is an equilateral triangle, which means all the side lengths are equal. So it would be fair to say that we have the perimeter of any equilateral triangle in this situation is equal to 3 times the length of the sides. So let's go ahead and go back to our situation here and say, are we talking about side lengths or angles? Since there's nothing about angles mentioned anywhere in here, we're talking about 3 sides. The intercept 0 means that it has a triangle with angle measure of 0 or side length of 0. When we're talking about these pieces, what we're actually talking about is we're talking about a side length. So the y-intercept 0, 0, 0 means that if we have 0 for the measurement of the side lengths, as we talked about with x, and 0 for the measurement of the perimeter, then we're talking about that the side length of 0 has a perimeter of 0, meaning that, again, coming back to this piece of 0, 0, if this is the sides, if you have a side length that has nothing, then you're going to have a perimeter that has nothing. We'll continue through these different problems here using same or similar situations where we want to identify what is the y represent in a cash box after x tickets, what does the x represent, and then we need to recognize what is the slope of the line and what is the y-intercept, and what do these things actually mean. The slope of 1/4 means that each blank is 25 cents. I'll go ahead and go back to that value, what we're talking about with slope. We know that slope, m, is the change in y over the change in x. Notice that we just changed what we're looking at here. Before, in our previous example, we saw that this was going to be k is equal to y divided by x. Well, that's because it had a constant of proportionality. It was a proportional relationship. In this case right here, we know that this is not proportional because the y-intercept is 8, where we recognized before the y-intercept was 0. This tells me that my line is passing through at 8 on the y-axis. That's some important, super important information. So when we talk about the slope and what is the meaning of the slope, 1/4 means that each ticket is 25 cents. And the reason we're saying ticket is because see how it says game right here? Game is not mentioned really anywhere in here. It says X tickets are purchased for carnival games. We're playing games, but what we're actually looking at is what's changing is the number of tickets. The intercept represents, well, in this case, the intercept, let's look at this. The intercept represents 0, 8. Well, if X is the number of tickets, if I bought 0 tickets, but I've already paid $8, that means that I started out with $8 in my cash box. So right here, I need to have 8 as the y-intercept. The intercept means $8 was my beginning value or my initial value in the cash box. Hopefully that makes sense. Go ahead and go through the other examples here. Item C and item D. I would suggest using the same strategies of marking the text. Problem number 2. Customers at the gym pay a membership fee to join and then a fee for each class they attend. Here is a graph that represents the situation. This is some important piece right here is they pay a membership fee to join. That means they have to pay just to get in. And then there's a separate fee for each of the classes that they attend. Well, here's some things that I know about the gym and know about the information that's being given right here. Let's recognize a couple things from the graph before we answer the questions. I see that my graph begins right here at 60. I see that I am increasing $20. So I know this is dollars and I know this is classes, and it looks like it's $20 for every one class. So I see that my slope with this is going up 20 and over 1. And then as I recognize what my labels say in my Y and in my X, my Y coordinates talk about dollars. So this is $20. My X coordinates talk about classes. That means that each class in this case is it's $20 per class. What else I know is this, is I still have this 60 to figure out. Well, if I began with 60, then I had to pay $60 as my membership fee. So that means that I'm going to be recognizing that the cost of my membership is $60 plus $20 for every single month or every single class that I attend. So let's go ahead and apply that information here. Now, as we look at this, now that we know what our graph is actually talking about, let's go ahead and see what we're talking about. Compare the statement about what the slope of the line shown and the points mean in this situation. The cost of a class is $20. Complete the statement about the vertical intercept. So now we're talking about right here, we're talking about that 60. Before we were talking about the slope, and we know the slope is the cost per class. So now we want to talk about the intercept. Go ahead and mark those right here. Which one is the intercept? Well, we already talked about class, so it has to be a membership. And we have to figure out that this cost is $60 just to be a member. Final question. The graph shows the relationship between the number of cups of flour and the number of cups of sugar in Lynn's favorite brownie recipe. I think it's important to note when we look at our graph, what we're looking at, cups of sugar is the X. And the cups of flour is the Y. And we see that obviously if there's no sugar, then there is no flour. We see that this is a proportional relationship, meaning that if she doesn't add one, she does not add the other. So let's go ahead and recognize these pieces. See how the Y, the cups of flour, is also represented here in the table, and the cups of sugar is represented here in the table as X. Okay, let's move on with some more of this information. See what we're supposed to do. The table shows the amount of flour and sugar needed for Noah's favorite brownie recipe. Since this is Noah's, we're going to be able to compare the two. Noah and Lynn, well, looking at what Noah does, cups of flour is 1 cup of flour to every 3 halves cups of sugar. And then we have 2 cups of flour for every 3 cups of sugar. Assuming with the two of them, obviously, if you're not adding flour, you're not adding sugar, both of these should be a proportional relationship. We know from Lynn that her slope right here is basically a 1 to 2. So we see this because we're talking about 0, 0, and then we have the ordered pair of 2, 1. Well, knowing that these are proportional helps us out a lot, because now I know that my constant of proportionality when using this ordered pair of 2, 1 is going to be 1 cup of flour to 2 cups of sugar. When we're talking about Noah's information, I don't think it's very easy to use this right here, but I do, since I see integer values right here, I think it's good to see that his constant of proportionality is 2 cups of flour to 3 cups of sugar. So now that we have those two pieces of information, notice the very first thing I did was determine what the slope is and determine if these are proportional relations. I know that both of these relationships are 0, 0, because no flour means no sugar. They didn't start out with any. And now the question is, coming into this with slopes of 1/2 and 2/3, Noah and Lynn buy a 12-cup bag of sugar and divide it evenly to make their recipes. If they each use all of their sugar, how much flour did they each need? Well, think about this case that they divided it evenly. That means that each person got 6 cups of sugar. So how much will each of them need? What we need to be able to look at then is, if we were to continue this graph right here for Noah, we have 3 halves, which I'm going to change that to 1.5. Add 1.5, which makes 3. Add 1.5, which makes 4.5. Add 1.5, which makes 6. And we see our constant rate over here is continuing to increase by a rate of 1.5 cups of sugar for every 1 cup of flour, which means that after that next value, I would have 4 cups of flour. Looking at Lynn's values, with 6 cups of sugar, if I were to continue this same pattern, we saw her constant rate of, for every 1 cup of sugar, or 1 cup of flour, we increase 2 cups of sugar. So increase 1 cup of flour, 2 cups of sugar, 1 cup of flour, 2 cups of sugar. Lynn should need 6 cups of flour. So a couple different pieces that we can use with that. Let's go ahead and see our information here. If they bought those two values with, or excuse me, they bought the 6-pound bags, we know that Lynn needed, with 6 cups, she needed 3 cups of flour, and Noah needed 4 cups of flour. Use the same strategy when we're talking about 10 cups of flour and divide it evenly in the recipe. They both got 5 cups. How much sugar do they need to go with their values? Use decimal notation if necessary, and you're off. Go ahead and hit submit when you're all done. You're doing great.